Dr. Oren, welcome. Always good to talk to you. The report today from Amit Segal and other sources is that Prime Minister Netanyahu has decided to occupy Gaza and go into areas where the hostages are believed, to send the IDF to areas where the hostages are believed to be held. What's that mean to Americans? What does occupy Gaza mean?
Oh boy, let's begin with the question, can it be done? Can it be done? And the question that many Israelis are going to ask when they hear Netanyahu say, well, we're going to occupy Gaza, Israelis are going to ask, well, very interesting, with what army? The army is exhausted. The army is exhausted, has been fighting now for over 500 days, these reservists. They are emotionally traumatized, physically spent. They did a study during the Vietnam War that said after 40 days of constant combat, the efficacy of a soldier drops to about zero. That's 40 days, because you can imagine what these soldiers have been in. They've been in combat for 24/7. So I'm really at a loss to tell you whether there's going to be an army to carry this out. So that's the first case. Then there's the international framework. We've seen now what international pressure can do to Israel. We're hanging by a very delicate thread internationally, and that thread is Donald Trump. And we've seen an erosion of even MAGA support for Israel's position, especially among young conservatives. And we don't know how long we can, pull stretch that rope, that string that is Donald Trump is standing on. So that's another consideration. Whether it can be done, what is the price? Whether the army can go from house to house and ferret out to Hamas, because the problem is not house to house, it's tunnel to tunnel. And in those tunnels are hostages. And those hostages, we now know, may not be released if we ratchet up the pressure on Hamas. They may be executed by Hamas, as has been the case in the past. So there are a lot of big questions here. I think you have to pull back and say, okay, what are Israel's options? One option, of course, would be to plow ahead and try to destroy Hamas. Total victory, as Netanyahu frames it. The second would be total surrender, as most Israelis want. And now, according to the polls, which is to say that Israel will simply announce it's pulling out of Gaza. Just give us the hostages back and we'll go home. And Hamas can emerge from the tunnels, reoccupy Gaza, rearm Gaza, and stays the next October 7th, because that's what its leaders said they would do 10,000 times over. Okay? That's another option. The third option, which is not an option, is that you reach a temporary ceasefire deal with Hamas, but Hamas has rejected that. So that really is not much of an option. So you're literally left with either surrender or plowing forward. There doesn't seem to be much of a middle point. And so, either argument has its merits, and Netanyahu, as an elected leader of the state of Israel, has the prerogative and has the power to choose the former of those options.
Now, Dr. Oren, what you referred to about combat efficacy of a soldier who's been in combat for 40 days is true. I've read that before. Doesn't the IDF rotate their battalions in and out of Gaza and let them rest in between?
In theory, yes. In practice, no. I've spoken to several people in my own community who have spent 400 or 500 days in combat. Sometimes they rotate them up to the north, where the fighting has been far less intense, certainly in recent weeks, or into Syria, where there is really no fighting right now. But still, it's being away from your family, it's being away from your homes, it's being away from your jobs. Tremendous amount of bankruptcies, of divorces, of substance abuse now, from the sheer emotional and taxing weight of serving hundreds of days in the reserves. The reserves, you should know, and I'm saying this as a military historian, the Israeli reserves were never intended to carry on this type of fight. They fought in 1967 for 6 days. They fought in 1973 for 3 weeks. In my period, the Lebanon period, the period of the First and Second Lebanon War, the most I ever served was about 70 days. So this is something quite extraordinary.
If they send just the how big is the standing army, meaning your 18 to 20-year-olds who are doing their mandatory service?
So that number is classified, is something in the vicinity between 125 and 150,000 troops. And those are Israelis between the ages of 18 and 21. That's the mandatory period of service. If you're an officer, if you're a pilot, if you're in special forces, if you're in certain other units, it can be much longer. A pilot can serve as long as 12 years. and women 2 years. But the minute you're out of finish those 3 years or those 5 years, whatever, you're called up to the reserves. I was called up to the reserves 2 weeks after I got out of the regular army. So, and then in the past, the most you were supposed to be able to serve was 60 days a year. That was the maximum. And that would be divided between training and operational service, which could be anything from patrolling a border to actually going on raids. But and reserve duty was tough. And the notion was that the reservists were the real soldiers of the state of Israel, that the standing army was designed to hold the line for about 24 hours until the reservists could take over. And the great battles of Israel, the liberation of Jerusalem in 1967, the crossing of the Suez Canal in 1973, were all carried out by reservists, not for the most part, not by conscripts.
So if Netanyahu and the cabinet decide, the prime minister says, go hard, go fast, go with regard for the hostages, but not holding back, how long does a full-throated, full-force offensive take to reduce Hamas to a barely standing few hundred terrorists who have scattered throughout Gaza? Because you won't be able to stamp out all the rats.
So if history's any metric, in 1956, during the Suez campaign, it took the Israeli armed forces about a day to conquer Gaza. In 1967, the Six-Day War, about a day and a half to conquer Gaza. It's not that big, right? And you have a very large army going in there. The big question is, what is going to be the cost to Israeli soldiers? What's going to be the cost to Palestinian civilians? And lastly, what will be the cost to the hostages? And these considerations didn't exist to a large degree in previous encounters in Gaza. They just didn't. Certainly not with the hostages. And on top of all that, there's the international context, where Israel now is largely delegitimized. There's not a tremendous amount of support, even in the United States, for the continuing of Israel's war in Gaza.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.